G'day everyone, it's Craig here. Today I'm going to take you through how I edited a photo. This is an image I just recently posted to Instagram, and I'm just going to take you through my process of editing this image. I'll take you through the equipment, the settings, a little bit on the histogram, but on the left is the image, the final image, fully edited and posted on Instagram, and on the right is the raw file. So what equipment did I use? I used a Nikon D810 with the Nikon 16-35 f4 lens, the Manfrotto B3 tripod, and a wide remote shutter release. So that's the equipment that I used. The settings I had, I was at ISO 64, 25mm focal length, f11, and 1.4 seconds. And the reason I was at 1.4 seconds, I was just in bulb mode, and I was just manually bracketing off a few photos here. So from a histogram perspective, you can see on the top right hand side, it's over on the blacks and over on the darks. I've lost a little bit of detail in the shadows here. I'm not too concerned about that. However, though, I was really trying to look for a moody type image, so I wanted to underexpose deliberately. I was really more focused on making sure I didn't really lose anything in the highlights. Over on the right hand side here, my whites and the highlights, I haven't clipped over on the right hand side, so I'm okay with that. So that's the settings that I took it on, and you can see here I did not compose correctly for the buildings, and you can see the buildings are tilted off to the left a bit, but that's okay, I'll fix that up. It was my last sort of shots for the morning before I left Melbourne, and took these ones here, but we should be able to fix that up in processing now. So that's what I'll do. We'll take you through the editing process, how I got to that final image that you just saw before. So what I'll do is I'll just start with the transform tab, and if I just click on auto here, it should straighten up the buildings. There we go. So the buildings are nice and straight, but now I've got white areas that I will need to crop out, and that's okay, because I need to crop out anyway because of Instagram, obviously. So I use a 5.5 by 7 aspect ratio for Instagram, because that just seems to be what I can maximize out of posting on Instagram. So then I'll crop in a bit here now to get to where I need to get to. That seems about right. So just click on done, and there we go. So now I've got the buildings nice and straight, and I've cropped into the aspect ratio that I'm looking for. Okay, so that's that. So what I'll do now is we'll start back up on the basic. Actually, no, I'll do camera calibration. So this calibration panel here is what I use to really transform a different feeling, I suppose, on the image. So if you're looking to try and look for something a little bit different from a color palette and tonal perspective, really start off with the camera calibration tool. This is a red, cream, and primary hues and saturation that goes across the whole image. So what I'll do is I'll change the hue a little bit on the red primary to about -4, and I'm going to increase the saturation to about +27. My inspiration really for this image really come about with this building on the left hand side here, how it's a nice red, and I want to sort of convey that feeling across the whole image. So you'll see by the time we finish it, you'll see hopefully that sort of color tone and the tonal pattern goes throughout the image. Okay, so that's red primary is at -4, saturation's up at +27. From a green primary perspective, I'm going to reduce the saturation to -27. And then also with the blue primary, I'm going to change the hue to more of an aqua color. So I'm going to do that to -28. So that's the camera calibration. Back up to the basic panel now. So I always start off with camera calibration and then move on over to the basic panel. I'm going to reduce the exposure even more. So even though it's sort of underexposed, I really want to convey some sort of mood on this image, like I do for a lot of mine. So I'll just make that about 0.6 of a stop less, so it's -0.6. The contrast, I'm going to increase the contrast slightly, so probably about past 12. And then the highlights, I'm going to take down to reduce the highlights, and this will really, you'll see now the clouds. You'll be able to start seeing the clouds and the foggy. It was a really foggy morning, and the fog was hanging across the top of the buildings, and so now I can really sort of see the darks and the lights across this area now. So that's what I was really focusing on here. Reducing the highlights will do that. The whites, I'll bring the whites up. Now I'm just going to hold my Alt key down to see where the whites start clipping. As soon as you start seeing white areas when you're holding the Alt key, that's where you'll start seeing losing some of the detail. So the more white you'll see there, I'm losing that detail now. You can't see anything except white in the image. So I've gone too far, so I'll go back to just clipping that a little bit. I might just take that down to just so I can start seeing it. Yep, that's fine right there. So that's the whites at plus 23. Blacks, I'm going to reduce my blacks as well, just for that mood. You can see I'm losing the detail in the trees, but that's okay. I'll leave that there for now because I'm really just trying to really portray something a little bit darker. And then from a shadows perspective, I do want to raise the shadows up so you can start seeing the path in the foreground. And I might raise the shadows to about plus 52 here. Okay, so I'll have a look at before, so far, and after. So you can see the change already in the sort of the mood, especially with the aqua and the reds starting to come through now with the camera calibration. With the clarity, I'm going to increase the clarity just slightly, not too much. I'm going to leave the saturation and vibrancy just because I'm going to do a little bit around the colors and here, and I don't want to do too much vibrance and saturation. I'm really trying to do a sort of a moody, muted tone on that. So that's the basic panel done. Let's now move into color palettes here. So that's the color panel. Okay, I might just increase the saturation slightly on the reds. Sorry, that's the hue. Let's get rid of that. Just slightly increase saturations on the red here, and then the luminance, I'm going to really brighten up those reds. Especially, it's really only going to affect the building, but that's okay. It's what I'm looking for. The reds are going to go, the luminance on the red is going to go up to plus 24. Now the orange hue, I'm going to change that more of a red now as well. So I'm going to move the slider to the left to about minus 27. And so you can see, if I go all the way down, you can see how that really changes the red building and the reflections in the water as well. So I really want to try and focus on that, but obviously not that much. So let me just reduce that to about, move the slider over to more of a red, about 27. So it's going to make it more of a red tone. I'm going to increase then the saturation as well. Let's make that about 25. And then I'm going to really try and brighten up that red area. So I'm going to really pump up the luminance. So you can see if I reduce it, it really knocks it back. It really brightens it up and really highlights it more if I increase the luminance. So I will do that. I'll probably do about 83. That's fine. I won't do the yellows. The greens I'm going to do, I will change the sliders just because of the trees in the foreground and in the background there. I'm just going to really increase the saturation here to about 38, and also the brightness. So I want to really increase the brightness on the trees so that we can see them a bit better. So I'm plus 74. So if I reduce it this all the way, the luminance down, you can see the trees in the background in particular. You go up and you can see them really brighten up a bit. So let's make this plus 70, about 75. That's fine. And the blues as well. So you'll notice up in here, there's not quite grey in the sky. There are some blue tones through there as well. So what I might do is reduce the luminance down on that and really darken that sky off to give it a bit more of a moody greyer feeling. minus 29, 28. Yep, that's fine. I might actually reduce the saturation slightly just to give it more of a grey, so you can see how it's reduced the blue out of the skies. It's really just more of a grey. Or if I pump it up, you can see how much blue is thrown all the way through the image. So I might just reduce the saturation just slightly down to about minus 15. And that's everything for the color palette. So I'll do a before and after again. That's before and after. So that's the color palette. So now what we might do is sharpen this image up a bit. So this is in the detail panel. I might sharpen it up to about 100 there. What else will I do here? The detail I'll reduce to about 20. That will just make it the sharpening a little bit softer, and then I'm going to mask it. So holding down my Alt key, if I smooth the slider up, you can see there, and you can see the white outlined area is the only areas now that are getting sharpened. So if I reduce the masking all the way down, see that the less I mask, the more the image sharpens. What that can do though, if you don't mask, is increase the amount of noise in your image if you over sharpen. So you only want to sharpen the areas like the edges of buildings and the edges of trees and leaves and so forth. So I'll put that up to about 50. And then that sharpens that area. And that's everything from a sharpening perspective. All right, so that's probably the basic image done. Now I'll go and do a lot of customized adjustments up here across in the custom adjustments area. So I might just start off with graduated filters, which is this one here. And I'm going to reduce my exposure. So if I get exposure, and I'll reduce my exposure. How much by here? About 3/4 of a stop, and I want to reduce my exposure across in the skies again. So I'll click and drag, and I'll just bring that down a bit here to make the sky a bit darker. And I'm also going to take the blacks down to make it even a bit more darker again. So probably about minus 50. Wonderful. And now you can see how that sky looks a little bit more darker and a bit more moody. So that's that one. Let's click on done. Now I want to reduce the exposure down here on the pathway. I want to really continue to have the focus in on the buildings around here. So I will again, graduated filter, reduce my exposure probably by about half a stop. And then I'll reduce that up to about here. Yeah, there we go. And I've just reduced the exposure down the bottom here again. So the bottom, it's like a vignette. So the bottom part of the image is now a bit darker. The top part of the image is a bit darker. It then forces the viewer to sort of look more in the middle of the image. And we'll click on done there. I think I want to increase the exposure on the tree as well and really highlight the greenness in the tree. So I'll do another custom adjustment on the graduated filter. So what I'll do is I will increase the shadows, probably about 28 to 30, and slightly increase the exposure as well. And if I click and drag, you can see, now you can start seeing the leaves of the tree come alive again. So I might increase the shadows slightly a bit more. What it's also doing though, when you do this, it is also increasing the exposure and the shadows across here in the sky, which I don't want to do. So what I'll do is if I go to, while I'm in this graduated filter, if I go brush and then down to erase, and now my little minus button will come up here, and I'm just going to erase in here, just in around the sky area. And if I hover over this again, as you can see now, it's taken away the graduated filter for the sky area. I've missed a little bit in there, so I might just do a bit more in there. And there we go. And now you can start to see just the leaves and so forth up in the top right hand corner. Just I think it conveys another more complexity into the image. So click on done. What else do I need to do? I think I might need to highlight this building a bit more. So I'm going to do a radial filter. I'll click on here, and I want to increase the exposure by about a stop, and also I'll increase the shadows as well. Probably up to about 30 maybe. And I've also got my feather at 100. Now, feather's really important. To really keep it natural, I keep my feather at 100, just so the transition from the middle of the the radial filter to the edge is really smooth. So I'll click and drag that over. And now you can see the building is a lot more highlighted there. So if I was to do and reduce my feather to say 0, you can see it goes up hard against the edges here. So you really want to make it as natural as possible. So let's make the feather 100. Let's reduce this down a little bit here. So it's just the building there. That's good. I like that. Let's click on done. Let's bring out the bottom part of this tree here as well. So let's do another exposure adjustment. Let's just do exposure about a stop, and shadows again. I'll keep that again about 30. That's probably a little bit too bright, so let's just reduce the shadows. That's about a stop of light there now, so I think I like that as well. Now you can start to see the tree better, but not too much that it takes away from the focus in the background there. That's good. And now down in the path here, you can see these two little, obviously it was just raining in that morning beforehand, so that wet look looks really good. I might just try and highlight these two little puddles here on the pathway. So again, I'm going to do another exposure adjustment here. I might just do half a stop, so 0.5. Increase the shadows a bit. Now what I want to do is, like I said, create that sort of more of a red aqua feel throughout the image. So I'm going to go into my color palette here and select a bit more of a red hue and saturation. Okay, so if I go probably about here, let's see what that looks like. So now that theme, there's red reflections on the water here, and now there's some red reflections on these water puddles as well. So it's probably a little bit too much, so I might reduce the saturation down. About 26 would be good. Let me just do that. There we go. So it's a little bit of a tint, but not too much. I'll do the same as well here. I probably don't do a bit too much, so reduce the saturation there. Yep. And click on done. So now this looks like highlights of the puddles of the path, especially coming across from the lamp here. So it conveys that the lamp maybe is reflecting the light off the puddles there. So that's that done. Okay. Probably a key one here too is to really change the tonal. I want to change the color of the water of the river here. So what I'll do is I will use my adjustment brush here. Now I want to just do a temperature adjustment. So let's increase it to about 25 in temperature. And I'm also going to change the hue. So about 9, that's fine. And then let's increase the saturation to about 20. There we go. And now I'm just going to paint in across the river here. Now it's a bit messy at the moment, but what I'll do is I will, after this is done, I will erase the areas that I don't want to be done. And you can see now there's a really nice metallic tone to go in line with the red building that is in the image that I really want to focus on. Now, probably on a nice sunny blue day, you don't want to go and tint the river this colour, but because it's cloudy and it's a different type of mood, you can get away with this now and just really bring something different to the image. So overall that looks pretty good, but you can see here if I hover over there, I have sort of spilled over onto the path, the pier down the bottom there as well. So what I'll do is I'll click on erase, and now I'll just erase those little red bits that I don't want. Normally in here, if I zoom in, I'd probably just erase off these balustrades as well. That way it makes the balustrades still neutral in colour. So if I do that just quickly, I won't do it all the way here because it might take too much time, but you can see what this does is, and then it just only affects the water now and it's not affecting the balustrades anymore. I've just erased and kept those colours back to normal. Just quickly do this. It's very rough, so take more time when you're doing it. Alright, that'll do. Click on done. Zoom back out. Okay, that's that. And I think that's pretty well it. So that's pretty well the image. Now if I grab the reference to see what my original was and original image looked like, and the finished image there. So this is the one I posted to Instagram. This is the one I've just edited here. Okay, and then I'll do before and after. So that was before, and this is after. So you can see here, I might just bring the shadows up slightly, and I'll just increase exposure slightly. Before, after. And you can really see the different mood that you can portray in images by just using Lightroom. So hopefully you enjoyed that. Let me know if you enjoyed it. If you'd like me to do some more of this, I do get a few requests on how do I edit my shots. So I thought I'd do that one with an image that I've just recently posted to Instagram, to give you some tips and ideas on how I go about my workflow in Lightroom. So thank you all, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye.